Hi guys, how's it going? In this video, we're going to call out the lies told by the Department of Culture and Media and Sport that claimed visa-free access to artists to perform in 19 different countries. Now let's be very clear here, they were lies. And yet again, we're told to deliberately mislead the public. In fact, they even misled some of the artists, including Elton John. So let's go. Now, the press release read as follows. We as the government have spoken to every EU member state about the issues facing our creative and cultural industries when looking to tour in Europe. That is lie number one. From these discussions, 19 member states have confirmed UK musicians, performers and artists do not need visas or work permits from for short-term tours. From these discussions, they discover that. Now, these countries include Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Ireland, Germany, Hungary, blah, 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 Slovenia and Sweden. That's lie number two. Then we had lie number three, posted on the Twitter account that read, after extensive discussions, we can confirm now that performers don't need visas or work permits for short-term tours in 19 of the EU member states. And then they go list them, blah, 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 blah. But we're engaging with the remaining member states and calling on them to follow suit. Lie number three. Formal approaches via officials and DCMS ministers, not just one, the whole cat and caboodle here, have been made to Spain, Croatia, Greece, Portugal, Bulgaria, Cyprus, Malta, blah, blah, blah. We are also working with the sector to amplify each other's lobbying efforts. That is probably lie number four, not because I don't understand, although I do not understand, we're trying to amplify each other's lobbying efforts. Have no idea what that means, but I'm pretty sure it's a number four. So now here's the proof. It took me about 10 seconds to find the German government site that is relevant to this industry, okay? It took me about 10 minutes to establish that number one, I did not require a visa to enter Germany. Number two, I could also read that if I'm partaking either as a performer, as a film crew, or in the operations of a concert or a performance, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Whole different kettle of fish. Now, in fact, I think I also learned that there are even different rules for EU nationals and non-EU nationals within different states within Germany, but I didn't bother looking it up any further. And by the way, for each application, for each person, there's a fee of 40 bucks. Okay, so I've left a link to the site below and it's quite straightforward, but you can see that the paperwork will build extremely quickly and that's going to cost money. But let's move on to the practical stuff that these numpties omitted from their press statement because they were too shallow, they were too mean to tell the full truth, which explains, by the way, and it's not a coincidence, why there wasn't a name on the press release. It was official release, not a name. So if a minister had put their name to it, they could have been called out on it. Or if any official had put their name to it, they would have been called out on it. But let's explain it. If you went to the Olympics and decided to buy yourself a new fancy Canon camera, Nikon camera, whatever, because they were cheaper, when you're returning back from Japan to the UK, you're liable to pay customs duty and VAT on not just the camera, but also on the customs duty, okay? Unless you're like me and you forget that you have it and you go through the green channel, okay? But now imagine you're setting up a stage or you're doing the lighting or sound, maybe the seating, the electrical work for a venue that holds just 500 people. So we're not talking AC/DC or U2 numbers here, but for many performers, that's a big audience. Now, imagine the equipment that goes along with you on that gig. Now remember that just because goods are second-hand does not mean that they're duty-free, and it definitely means they're not VAT-free. That's for sure. But here's the kicker. When the UK was in the EU, anybody or any company that imported goods from outside the EU has to pay VAT on the goods, has to pay the duty, has to pay the VAT on the duty, has to pay the shipping costs, and has to pay the VAT on the shipping costs. And that was all applicable, immediate payment, before they even saw the goods. Before you got your hands on them, you had to pay that up. Now translate that to a concert. You'll need a valuation on the equipment, along with the duty applicable and the VAT applicable. And you'll need the cash available to pay for the equipment before it's released to enter. So you need all that paperwork plus the money and the time. Sure, yes, you can claim it back, but you sure as hell won't get that back immediately. That's going to take some time. Now imagine that you're in Cologne or Dusseldorf and you want to travel over to Holland. It's only a couple of hours away. You want to do a gig. Remember, you know, it's a couple of hours for a performer. They're well used to traveling up and down the M1, you know, they're well used to travel, but not for the equipment. You see, why? Because number one, you haven't got the VAT reclaim done, and you sure as damn it do not have the cash back in your pocket for the VAT refund. But the problem is that VAT in Germany and VAT in Holland are not the same. So you have a choice. You can pay the VAT in Holland again, or go back to the UK, claim back your VAT from Germany, go back into Holland and pay the VAT again. So the whole thing is a mess. But that applies to anybody from outside the EU. So if you've got a concert with, say, an American comes over to the EU, what they do is they set up a company in the EU. That's an EU company, and these people are working for that EU company. That's how they get around that one. But for the local artists in the UK, they can't do that. It's impossible for them to do that. However, even if you get around the VAT problem, which isn't sorted out, what hasn't been sorted out is whether or not the performer can move the kit for work purposes from one country to another. Just as UK truck drivers now are restricted from picking up goods, say, in Italy and dropping them off in France when en route back to the UK. It's called cabotage. Okay? Now, if you're in that business, if you're in the trucking business, you're limited to 3 drops in 7 days, either direction. Okay? And if you're not, take for instance, you're a band and you're delivering your kit in the back of the van to the next gig in another member state, then Houston, you have a problem. And it's a big one. So in less than 10 minutes from just listening to this muppet here, you can see the obstacles. And now that the obstacles are explained to you and you have the links to check them out, don't you think those lying twats in the DCMS, whose job it is to know about this stuff, whose job it is to help people overcome these difficulties, knew this as well? Of course they did. All the musicians knew you didn't need a visa. That was never the issue. But they deliberately chose to lie to the British people. Nothing more complicated than that. Just a plain lie. Just imagine this. I'm sure some of you have done it. We call it the booze cruise. You travel over on the tunnel, you go into France, you load up the biggest car you can find, and you shove all the wine into it, okay? And you come back. We would generally do it around the beginning of December to get ready for the Christmas, the people calling to the houses and blah, blah. And what I would do is I would take the note, what do you want, what do you want, what do you want? Go over to the local warehouse, we call it the booze cruise, pick up all the wine, drive it back in the car. The only question that was asked of me was, is this for your own use? Which I said, yes, it is. All right, go ahead. Then when I get back to the house, the guys would drop in from wherever they are, pick up whatever wine they are, they sort me out. Okay? If, however, I'm bringing that wine in on business, that's a whole different matter. Now there's duty. The duty applies to that. But if for personal use, there's no duty. And it's exactly the same for those performers. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the flip side. You take care.